Welcome to If People Only Knew, the show that brings untold stories to light. I'm your host, Anna Matson. Let's get started. Welcome to the show. Today we have Billy Dees, and it's so incredible how we met because it was just in an X space. We were both fans of RFK Jr., both marketing people, and we were like, man, he really needs to up his marketing. And you have a podcast yourself, and I've been on it a few times, so that we've gotten to know each other. And as we've talked, little things you've told me here and there, I'm like, man, you do so much. And I just thought it would be an amazing episode to really go through what you do. You're very big into obviously marketing. That's how we, met really, but
Right.
also addiction and mental health. So I honestly, usually for my episodes, I get like a ton of background first and stuff, but I'm very comfortable with you that it's just kind of like, we're talking about addiction today and the things that you do. So we're just kind of hopping in.
Sure.
And yeah, so Billy, tell us just a little bit about you, like your background, maybe how you grew up, like just anything, fun facts about Billy.
That goes back a long ways. There was once this little particle and it was really hot. Then for one day, for no reason, it just exploded. Well, I'm not that old, but I've been around working professionally in audio, video, media production since the late 1980s. So, we used to record things on, those little strips called tape. And I used to drive them around. That was before the days you could just email files. I used to have to drive them around to the radio stations and things like that. I guess that's always been a passion of mine. It's still very much, I was an audiophile. You don't get that too much today. It's a niche thing. A lot of, people like the turntables and the old vintage audio gear, and it's kind of a niche thing. But back in my day growing up, that was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Guys in particular talked about what size engine they had, and then they talked about how many watts their amplifier was and how big their speakers were, that kind of preoccupation. And you don't hear that kind of language too much anymore because everybody's got a phone and all the music is stored on there. And regardless of what kind of phone you have, the technology that governs them is pretty much the same. So everybody has a phone that sounds pretty much the same. You might have some headphones or whatnot that sound better than another, but for the most part, people don't have long conversations about their audio equipment anymore. So I kind of miss those days, but that's kind of my background. And I was involved in retail. I was a disc jockey for a while. I did stand up for a while. And I've always had a quote unquote day job. Most of it hovered around electronics. And here about 10 years ago, I changed course a little bit. Living in Ohio, the addiction problem became very acute. And there's a lot of reasons for why that is. Rather than, make this a documentary, if you're interested as to why, there's a lot of reasons that you can go research it in terms of why Ohio was particularly bad. And
what's the cliff notes? Because I'm in Michigan, so we're actually destined to hate each other, but it's okay. Is it because we're so close to Canada? Because a lot of fentanyl comes through?
Well, yes and no. I'm going to say that the problems in Ohio started more towards the south with the rivers. And Ohio has an international flavor, probably a little bit more than Michigan does because of Ohio State and Columbus and all these other places. And in the 1990s, I really couldn't tell you exactly what laws in particular changed, but the way that companies marketed drugs, painkillers in particular, changed. So you could get away with a lot more, both in terms of as a drug company goes and as providers go. You could get away with a lot more. And that was part of it. It's not the whole thing. The other thing is that for whatever reason in Ohio, mental health, as with around the country, it's not exclusive to Ohio. But there was an odd convergence between mental health and drug use. And for whatever reason, it became very much a big problem, and it's still a big problem. The good news is being in marketing, that's kind of where the last 10 years I kind of got channeled into working for nonprofits. And I do volunteer for NAMI quite often. And NAMI is a national organization. Okay. And NAMI is, it's broken up into different, I don't know, sections, like the regional ones. And here in Ohio, where we're at, I'm in Stark County of Ohio, and the chapter there, I do MC what's called NAMI Walks. And NAMI Walks happens in October. And NAMI Walks is something that, well, here it does. Check your local chapter. But NAMI Walks is a very worthwhile event to attend. And, getting back to what was happening, as I heard more and more about the crisis, I ended up working for a company. And I work in marketing. And we have 3 pillars. We have addiction recovery, we have mental health, and we have social outreach. And those things here again all kind of go together. And one of the things that we've been working very hard to do, when I first started both volunteering and when I started working professionally for the industry, if you went somewhere and you even mentioned Narcan, you got a dirty look. If you went somewhere and you talked about addiction in any way, you would get a dirty look. And now that's not the case anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like everyone knows someone that
Yes.
has struggled in some form or fashion. My first episode, we actually talked about my husband suffered with, or just, had a problem with alcohol for a while, and he's like 4 years sober now. Like I said, I just feel like everyone, it's touched home at some point, some way. Some worse than others. Some people say everyone knows someone who's died from fentanyl. I'm fortunate I do not, knock on wood, but that's how bad it's getting.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. So when you started, were you just looking for a job, or did something really call you to that position?
A little of both. I had gotten into a situation where I was going to make a transition with my daytime career anyway. But I don't know if it was getting older or what it was, but I nothing against working for profit companies. I mean, I'm very much a capitalist, and capitalism has its problems. But the world would not exist in the same way had it not been for Henry Ford and Steve Jobs and all these other kind of folks. The world wouldn't be the same place without them. So I think we do need them. However, it's different now when I'm working for an organization such as this. And, you go to some of these community events that we have, and people will walk up to you and say, I have my parents or I have my children because of what you guys do. That's a little different than trying to hit sales marks every 3 months.
Yeah.
And here again, I'm not saying that money isn't important, because even a nonprofit needs money. You need to keep the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different mentality. A lot of the people there, a lot of the highly degreed professionals, for example, some of the doctors and nurse practitioners, things like that, they could make more money in the private sector. They absolutely could, but they believe in the mission. They believe in helping the underserved. And these are the people that I have the most empathy for, sympathy for, or respect for, probably is the better word. Some of these people that work with the homeless, especially some of the folks that help these people manage their finances. You're dealing with a population that their awareness. And that's a whole nother subject too. I've heard people shout at them. I was outside last fall, and there was a homeless person standing on the corner with a sign out asking for money. And somebody drove by and said, McDonald's, Burger King, they're all hiring. Okay. Now I understand where that comes from, but I've been around this population enough to know that these are people, just providing housing or giving them money isn't going to help them. They are people that intellectually just aren't as developed as other people. You know, they can't manage their own finances. They can't manage their doctor appointments. A lot of times, because they've let themselves go for so long, they have very serious physical conditions. And just shouting something like that at them, they need more than a place to live. Actually, what they need is more comprehensive. They actually need almost assisted living environments.
Yeah.
And some of them even aren't that old, but they need to be in a situation that's very similar to a nursing home.
Well, and just saying to get a job, like, can't you only get a job if you have an address? And if you're homeless, you don't have an address.
Yeah.
So that's where a part of the big cycle too, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And here again, the economics, I'm not going to deny is a part of the problem. It most certainly is. Okay. But it's oversimplistic to say, well, people, you know, the landlords are raising the rent, so people are homeless. That's oversimplistic. You know, you have people out there that are fighting addiction. They have mental health issues, and a lot of times that folds into addiction because they ended up addicted because they were self-medicating to begin with.
Yeah.
And now you have another segment of the population who is not. I'm not trying. I'm finding the right words, but they just don't have the intellectual awareness, the capability to function in today's society.
Yeah.
A lot of them have been, outcasted by their families. You know, their kids don't want to take care of them. A lot of them have been taken advantage of. We hear so much about mental illness in regard to crime when perpetrators are very, very seldom. I like the psycho movies as much as anybody else, but that's not representative of mental illness. You're far more likely to be a victim of crime as someone who is suffering from mental illness than you are to be a perpetrator. And a lot of these people are homeless, quite frankly, because their families got their money. You know, they chiseled them out of whether it was retirement or what little assistance that they got, and just abandoned them. So it's a very difficult population to reach. So I kind of got off the track there, but to answer your question, all these things kind of folded together, and I thought, this is a good place to be. Even though I'm not a provider, I'm going to go home feeling that I help people do something other than sell a better set of electronics, when the new model came out.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. I was going to say about the homeless population, I'm like losing my thoughts because I'm just like consumed listening to you. But do you think a lot of it too, I don't know the right word. I know mental institution is not the proper word. But don't we like not have as many or not have any like we used to? Like, I don't really know all the background with that. I just know that we had them and then something happened and they went away.
Yeah.
So you have people that really, like you're talking about, like they have mental health issues or I even just think about how severe autism is nowadays. I mean, a lot of people think autism is just a little neurodivergence. Like you just don't like to have eye contact with people, or, you're really obsessed with like piano or math. Like you have like a super skill. But a lot of people don't realize how severe autism can be. And it could be where you're an adult and you're in diapers. You don't have speech. You're hitting yourself. And these people, these kids that are now turning into adults, they live with their parents, and parents have had to put their whole life on hold to take care of them. So what happens if these people don't have their parents or don't have a caregiver to take care of them? Are they some of the people that are on the street today? Like, is there
I'm sure
a facility is there any facility that these people go to, or is it just like everyone ends up homeless? Like,
well, that's, getting back to the mission and why I got involved with it. People ask me, well, what do you do at a for marketing at a nonprofit? Because they think about Steve Jobs, and he made computers cool. But it's really about raising awareness, and the kind of stuff that you are talking about, quite frankly, is something that a lot of people just simply aren't aware of. Getting back to the drug issue, a lot of people have more empathy for the situation, sadly, because they, like you said, everybody's been touched by it now. Whereas 10 years ago, that was the person across the street. Now, when it's in your house, now you have a different attitude towards it.
Mm-hmm.
So these are kinds of things that have certainly, in my view, needed more attention on them. A lot of what happened, and not to get political, because I don't like to mix politics and these subjects, because I really feel they transcend politics. But as people wanted to cut, the promise is always to cut taxes, and to defend the police, a lot gets thrown on them. With mental health and the homeless, and police don't have the training for that. And the answer is always, well, just let the police take care of it. We need to cut this, we need to cut that. So when you have outreach programs that are funded, through taxes, when you have, case workers that are funded by taxes, all these things get cut. And the answer is always, well, just let the police deal with it. And really, to defend the police, they have a tough job anymore, because not only are they expected to act like police, but they're expected to act like paramedics. They're
Mm-hmm.
expected to act like social workers. They're expected to act like mental health professionals. They're expected to know all the laws in an instant for any given situation, just like an attorney does. When the fact of the matter is, when some of these things unfold, attorneys spend months analyzing everything and then go back and say what the police did wrong. So more and more gets lumped into that. And you just have a community right now that's not being served, and it's so politicized. For example, the right will say those people just need to get a job, and the left will say, well, it's just because of the landlords and all the greedy corporations that they're making housing unaffordable. And the fact of the matter is, there's a little truth in both of that, but it's much more nuanced to that than that. And people just follow the talking points with the team that they're on, is what happens, and no solutions ever really come up.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
I know someone whose daughter, she had a knee surgery at 15. They gave her pain meds, and she's been addicted ever since. Parents have done a great job taking care of her, trying to get her help, and they've kind of established that they will pay for things and give her housing and stuff if she stops. But if she keeps using, then they're going to cut her off. So it's been really difficult on them. So right now she's homeless because she's choosing to use. And, and we're the same age, actually. So it makes me wonder, like, her whole life was ahead of her, and now she's stunted.
Well, let me speak to that, because I'll tell you, that speaks to the stigma. And a lot of people will look at that and say, well, evidently drugs are more important than anything else. And that's a very simplistic way to look at it. I hear often too, a lot of times when I go out and do events, I'll get confronted by people who say something like, well, they made the choice, so now they got to stick with it. They made the choice the first day they took drugs. They knew it was wrong. And the fact of the matter is, here again, getting back to researching what happens in Ohio, in a country of 330 million people, I'm sure that there are people who party themselves recklessly into addiction. I mean, I'm sure it happens. But when you look at the path to addiction here in Ohio, that's not how addiction happens. It's kind of like the scenario that you've heard about the boiling water. Okay, so what happens is this. When you get into average temperature water and somebody turns the heat up on you, you're not going to feel it get hot. Okay, and that's kind of how addiction happens. You don't put your hand into boiling water and say, ouch. It happens slowly. And it can be something very simple. I think anybody listening to this, I'm sure, has done this at one time or another in their life. They've had a bad day at work, and they come home, man, I could sure use a beer. Man, after that, I'm going to open up that bottle of wine. I need a cigarette, whatever the case may be. And I would be willing to bet that we've all done that. And for the grace of God, I'm sure that a lot of the times it passes without incident. But there are other times, especially when you've had something traumatic.
Yeah.
Bad divorce. Okay, that's not going to go away with a good night's sleep. So all of a sudden, that bottle of wine gets drank. And on the weekends, I'm going to go out and have some fun. Then you have a few more shots of this and that. And it's like that water is getting warmer, okay, but it's not boiling. And what I'm describing, I'm kind of just throwing little pieces out there. You got to keep in mind that this might take place over weeks or months or years. Okay. And it happens in such small gradients that all of a sudden your need, whether it be for alcohol, let's say on a really bad day, when your divorce is really getting ugly, your partner's threatened to take custody of the kids, something really bad, a death in the family. It's real easy to go to the medicine cabinet. I got a root canal last year, and I still got a few pills left, and I'm going to take those and feel good. And then I'll deal with this in the morning. And here again, sometimes those things pass without incident. Other times, 6 months from now, you're making excuses to your doctor about what kind of pain you have, or you're scouring the over-the-counter section at the local drugstore. And the worst case scenario, you start, asking friends, hey, do you know where I can get some of this? And by that time, your subconscious is already telling you, I need this. Okay. It's telling you, I need this. Like when you're thirsty, you need a drink of water. Those same impulses are telling you, I need this to be comfortable. I need this to be sane.
And even if someone has not been addicted to a substance before, I bet they have, because even sugar is
Sure.
as addictive as cocaine. Caffeine, like these are all drugs,
Yes.
So I'm sure, even if, like I said, if someone has not been addicted to a substance that we think is associated with addiction, like alcohol or, pills or whatever, I'm sure people understand that feeling, like trying to go keto because you're getting rid of all your sugar, or trying to get off coffee if you drink coffee every day. It's a pain.
Yeah.
So exactly like what you're describing, you might not think it's anything at first until it is.
Yes, and even those things can lead to heavier things, because there comes a point when the sugar and the sweet things aren't doing it for you anymore.
Yeah.
So anything can be that stepping stone, and at that point, how bad is it going to get before you realize you're in trouble? And then when you throw in mental health factors, you throw in a little bit, let's say here again, getting back to a bad divorce, and now you're suffering from depression. Now you got something else going on.
Mm-hmm.
So now that those substances are that much more important. And at that point, not only is your subconscious telling you that you need it, but if this has been going on a while, there's physical changes in your brain that are happening. And at that point, you're wired to, I need this to survive. And that's why you see so much bad behavior in people that have addiction. And what you described is just the case. They would rather, be homeless and feed their addiction, because in their mind, you really have to step into it. Their mind has been physically altered.
Yeah.
At this point, there's been a lot of damage done. And I want to stress too, when people hear me talk about this, they start to gear up to tell me that I'm making excuses. And accountability is a big part of this. Here again, getting back to how conservatives and liberals argue about this, the fact of the matter is, it is very much something that is hard to control. You're not necessarily making a choice. There's a lot of paths to addiction, whether it be, painkillers, trauma. For example, heroin here I worked with a really good judge that has a heroin surviving organization, and their research shows 80% of the people that they take in addicted to heroin had child abuse and sexual abuse. Yeah. So, you're dealing with people who have a lot of underlying issues. And here again, that's not making excuses for them, but these aren't people who they're people like the idea that and this is a word we don't use. It's a terrible word. It's a junkie. But people have this idea in their mind that it's somebody with long hair driving down the road with their head out the window, shooting at police. And that isn't what they look like. Go out into your community today, depending on where you live, anywhere between 1 in 10, 1 in 8, 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people have some sort of an addiction problem. So when you're out, walking, taking a walk this evening or whenever, And the pure person mowing your lawn, that's what a quote unquote, that's a word we don't use, but that's what an addict looks like. That's what somebody suffering from addiction looks like. And anybody can find themselves on that path. And it's a terrible thing to say, but I hear a lot more empathy now, only because so many people have had it strike home. And it's kind of human nature. We have a tendency to be more empathetic when it hits us, when it's our kid.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a little different. He broke his ankle last year, and then he couldn't play sports his senior year, and he got depressed. That's how it happens.
Yep.
But prior to that, when it's the kid, a couple of streets over, well, that kid was nothing but trouble from day one. So we have a tendency to, when it hits home, the bigger picture gets seen.
And even not exactly on this topic, but just this was like, I don't know, 2 months ago, whenever those drones were over, I forgot what state even they were over, West Virginia or something. But whenever that drone story was huge and people were freaking out, I'm like, guys, I really don't care. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care about UFOs. I don't care about these drones. And I was like, wait a minute. If drones were over my house, I think I would care. So that's not fair that I don't care just because it's not over my house right now, because if we don't do something about it, they will be over my house. They'll be over all of our houses.
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely hear you there. Like, and not everyone has to be outraged and stuff all the time, but this is affecting our communities and hurting people. And we definitely need to do something about it. I think I was going to ask you, do you think it has something to do with just like the breakdown of communities, like the breakdown of community involvement and people, just being more digital than being in person and social?
Yeah, this is strictly my opinion. I don't have any research on this, although there is research out there that shows it. But there's been a breakdown on many levels of our society. And when I was growing up, I was never particularly religious, but I was raised Catholic. And back in the day when those old parishes were around, you had like St. Joe's, and they were the Italians, and then you had like St. Anthony's were Italians, but then you had what was it? There was All Saints, and they were largely Polish and Scandinavian folks. And these kind of people were just the salt of the earth, because when there was a death in the family or something like that, everybody was bringing over like pastas and cooked chicken, and they would, pull money together to help pay for the funeral. And that hasn't been replaced with anything. Those neighborhood coalitions really have not been replaced with anything. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, most of those families were intact. Now you have single parent homes where a parent's out of the house working all the time. Mm-hmm. And there's just so many breakdowns. The school communities have become political battlegrounds, as opposed to communities coming together to help children. So every little aspect of society that you can think of has contributed to people who don't have guidance. They don't have guidance. They don't know how to manage their emotions. And I would say social media has contributed a lot to that, because a lot of kids, see these perfect bodies and these rich homes and these lifestyles, some of which may be fake, but nonetheless, they see how other people live.
Well, I definitely know a lot is fake. There's influencers that literally like rent out places just to pretend that it's their home or a private jet, like whatever, just to make it look like they have a perfect lifestyle.
Sure. Well, I know there's been research on like Instagram where, young women feel that they aren't attractive because of the fact that they see these images online, and they see all the attention that the attractive people get. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how I would have handled it, quite frankly. There wasn't social media in my day. I kind of think I would have been okay, but I'm not sure. It's hard to say because I wasn't a part of it. I was pretty lucky. I was always a pretty big guy, and I wasn't one of the popular kids, but I never got picked on or anything like that. And that's a tough road for kids as it is. And then when they go home and they see that kind of bullying right on their phone, they can't escape it.
Hmm.
It's tough for a lot of kids. It really
Yeah.
is. So there's been a lot of institutions that have crumbled, and it's yeah. To answer your question, yeah, there's a lot of levels that have disappeared from our society.
I was, I always call myself a zillennial because I grew up with some technology, but not others. So I watched movies on VHS. My favorite one was Grease.
Hmm.
And I had to rewind it to watch it again. I had CDs, had all that. Um, and then in middle school, me and my brothers shared a flip phone. And in high school, I got an iPod. I don't even remember if there was Instagram at that time. I think at that time was just Facebook. So, I kind of grew up with it, but kind of not.
Hmm.
I feel like I grew up like a normal kid. Uh, so yeah, I'm thankful for that. But then even my sister, she's 10 years younger than me. So she grew up with it all. And me and
Yeah.
her, even though we're sisters, we were like so polar opposite. And even though I had a rough childhood, I had both parents in the house. I always wish I didn't, but I did. And then my sister, my parents were split up. So she went back and forth between both
Hmm.
houses, and you can just tell a difference between us. Like we're just totally different people. So you can literally see the effects of all of these things
Yeah.
just from us. So yeah, man, these kids, this would be off topic, but these kids coming up today, I just feel so bad for them. I mean, barely surviving COVID. So many of them are so behind with reading and math and everything. And now when you are done, getting old and ready to retire, my generation will be taking care of you, so you'll be fine. But when I get old, this next generation is going to be taking care of me, and that's scary.
Yeah. Um, that's probably one of the things that scares me the most is having to depend on somebody else.
Mhm.
Like I said, even now, even though I'm older, I don't really fear walking across the parking lot or anything like that. I always feel like I can handle myself. And a lot of times I see people that are so fragile, whether it be from illness or age, they can barely get in the car and they're just totally helpless to what's happening around them. That's a scary thing for me.
Mhm.
And it really speaks into what we're talking about in society. That's another group of people that gets just passed right over. And there's a lot of helpless people out there. A lot of them, like I said, getting back into what we were talking about, mental illness and addiction. There's a lot of people out there who are in very fragile states for whatever reason. And I just wish there was more empathy in the world,
Yeah.
because, yeah, no matter what your path takes you, no matter how successful you are, you're one bad day from finding out how easily you can get there, whether it
Mhm.
be a tragedy in your family, an illness, a bad accident. Your life can change on a dime. I've
Yeah.
seen it 50 million times, and even your financial situation can change. So you may think, oh, I got money in the bank, I got this and that. It all it takes is the right convergence of bad things.
Yeah.
And I've, here again, being involved in this community now for, let's say, 10 years in one way or another, I've seen a lot of stars who were very high in the sky fall. I really have. And I've heard their stories. And like I said, there, but for the grace of God, go I. And I think that's one of the things that motivates me too. Because you never know when you're going to be in that position and need those things. And that's kind of one. You're asking me about what motivates me. I think that really motivates me as I've gotten older. And I've seen a lot of my friends, people older than me, same age as me, and quite frankly, a lot younger than me, really just get their lives off track through no deliberate action of their own. And it's easier to get there than what you think it is.
So for anyone, I don't know if you can necessarily say because you're not a provider, but I'm sure you can. Like if anyone is suffering with addiction, like, do you have any kind of resource, or is there like a phone number people can call? Like, what is out there for people who are struggling?
Well, the good news is if there's any good news, is there's more in help out there now than what there has ever been. I mentioned NAMI. NAMI is a good place to start, and when it comes to mental health. But quite frankly, you can just pick up the phone, call the police. You can go into your local emergency room, say, "Hey, I got a problem. And there's usually people there who can point you to the resources in your community. A lot of times these resources are grant funded. A lot of times, insurance now is actually, that's another thing. There's insurance has actually become much more understanding to these needs. So if you need help with, getting detoxed, which is the first step, if you have any type of addiction, and it's not as unpleasant as it used to be. I think when people hear detox, they kind of imagine, like you've seen in the movies where people are strapped to a gurney and they're sweating it out, they're screaming in pain. There's drugs that will counteract that, and get you cleaned up in a relatively short period of time. Now, whether you stay that way is another thing. That's why you need to get into counseling right away. A lot of times, the providers will recommend residential treatment after you've gone through detox. A lot of times your case may warrant outpatient. But here again, insurance companies, Medicare and Medicaid and all this have adjusted, and they understand that that's a need now. A lot of places are nonprofits and they will help you. And here again, this is where accountability is. They won't keep taking you over and over and over again because you drain their resources. So you have to show a serious commitment. And that's kind of a trouble spot because denial is a big part of this. And oftentimes people get into treatment because their family members have pushed them there. And sometimes those stick and sometimes they don't. I don't believe that you have to hit rock bottom, although I've had people that have gone through this process tell me you've got to get to the point where you absolutely can go no lower. I don't necessarily believe that. There are people who have rectified their situations before that happens. But it has to come from within. You either have to recognize that you've hit rock bottom. Some people have found faith. I've heard that a lot. That they had to surrender to a higher power, or they've just had the ability to recognize that I finally have a problem. I know I have a problem, and I have to get help, or I'm going to die. One of my favorite stories. I interviewed somebody with a company that I work with, and he was talking about the time that he was hugging his children goodbye. His wife had custody, and the little boy brushed off some cocaine off of his shirt, and he said, "I knew that day. Wow. I had. It was over that moment. I got myself into treatment right then." Wow. And some of us have those watershed moments, and some of us don't. I talked to another gentleman, speaking about how easily you can become addicted. He was a straight A student, got straight A's all through high school, was on his way to pretty much going to college anywhere he wanted to. And he went to a graduation party and there was spiked punch there. And he tried the spiked punch. And here again, somebody who's never gotten in trouble before, that very night he went to the graduation party, he got thrown out of it because he started acting so wild. And there began a 30-year battle with alcoholism on that one drink. Wow. And he lost his relationship with his children and a lot of other people as time went on. He finally turned the corner. He's actually a counselor now.
Wow.
Yeah, he's actually a counselor. And a lot of the people, I've had counselors tell me that it helps to have been through that, with the client because the client understands that you've been through that. You understand what it's like. And it's not as easy as just, well, stop. Okay. Yeah. But by the same token, I've had other people tell me it's not a prerequisite. Sometimes it's not necessarily a prerequisite that you walked in their shoes to help them. But nonetheless, it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, some people are going to have that watershed moment or not, and that's my point.
Mhm.
That it's got to come from within.
Yeah, my
That's the
husband,
thing.
we had, I wouldn't even say that much of a fight. We just had a tiff one night. And I just was like, this isn't you. This isn't you. And I said, we're going to go to bed and we'll talk in the morning. And
Mhm.
we woke up in the morning. He's like, yeah, that was not me.
Yeah,
And he he's 4 years sober now.
yeah,
So yeah, it,
yeah.
it 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 wasn't rock bottom for him, but it's just been remarkable, and he attributes it to his faith because he really does not crave alcohol anymore at all. And someone had made a comment to me that, like, if you don't think he's struggling, like, you're just not paying attention. And I'm like, no, he's fine. Like,
Hmm.
he's fine. He doesn't crave it. Even we were at the store and we drink kombucha all the time, and some kombucha has very minimal alcohol in it. And if he even thinks like it's a brand that he doesn't trust, like even if it's like half a percentage or something, he's like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like he won't touch it.
Hmm. Yeah. Stigma gets in the way of so many things. I'll throw this in there too before we leave. I think that I've heard a lot of talk online recently about suicide. And suicide is one of those things that a lot of people still feel is a taboo subject. I've talked to some families here in the last couple of years, and I was shocked. I wasn't surprised by what they told me, but nonetheless, I felt bad that in 2025, a lot of these families were afraid to put in the obituary that their loved one died by suicide because of the stigma involved, and because of they didn't want to get hateful comments. Um, I feel that suicide, the understanding of it has gotten better. Um, I will say this: um, if you notice someone is demonstrating some willingness to commit self harm, be sure you say something. I think that that's something that we've gotten the word out. You'd have to do it tactfully. Like, you don't want to say, "Hey, Anna, you're not planning on killing yourself, are you?" You don't want to say that. But saying something, I think people are afraid to say something because they're afraid that they're going to plant the idea. Well, if I'm talking to you, Anna, and I see you, demonstrating suicidal behavior, you've already started thinking about it. It's already a journey that you're going on. So saying nothing is far worse. Doing nothing is far worse. You never know what somebody is going to do. I can't give you a blanket guarantee that somebody you talk to won't end up harming themselves. But the idea is it's much, 1,000 times better to say something, because at least there's a chance you can help them. If you say nothing, there's nothing to correct that thinking in their mind. There's nothing to tell them that somebody cares. There's nothing. Their path is being reinforced by the idea that nobody cares,
Yeah.
and there's no resources for them. So you always want to say something. It's always the better bet to say something. The research is very clear on this. Go ahead and say something. With that being said, the next thing that gets forgotten about is when a suicide does occur, it's very important to reach out to anybody that's close to that person, whether it be their spouse, whether it be their best friend, somebody they worked with for 20 years, because
Yeah.
now at this point, the risk for suicide with any of those people that was close to them has skyrocketed.
Yeah, yeah,
It
and we
has.
just saw this recently. There were 4 officers from the same department that committed suicide,
Mhm.
and at first people were like, "Well, what were they working on?" Like, they were onto something and it was planned, like someone killed them. But I'm in a group with some veterans and they said, "No, this is very normal. We're used to seeing this, especially." And that's another thing, veterans, like in,
Mhm.
you probably know the term, like what's the term when they're like together, like in a unit, I think.
Okay.
So veterans in a unit together. Like if one commits suicide, it's very likely that more will go as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, the term there's another organization here in Ohio called Light After Loss, and one of the things that they talk about, there's only so much you can do with prevention. There are times when a suicide will just take you by total surprise, but postvention is what they call it. You have to get to that person's family. You have to get to their children. You have to get to their parents and make sure that they get the help that they need. Because, like I said, the proximity to a suicide, the close proximity, the closer you are to that person, the more you are now at risk. And I had a friend here recently. His one of his ex-girlfriends. And one of the first things I told him, "You're not alone, are you?" No, he was out of state. So it's very important to talk about it and understand it. So that's another thing as far as stigma goes. Don't be afraid to discuss it with your friends or family. Learn more about it. There's a lot of zero suicide programs and training things that you can take in your local community, and there's a lot of ways that you can get involved with that as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that stuff up because I didn't even think about it, but we need to, because unfortunately it's very common nowadays. And eh, for us to know what to do if it ever does happen, I think that's really important. Now, I know I always say, not everything has to be political, but politics just intertwines so much
Mm-hmm.
of our lives. So, do you have anything that you would like to see government wise? Like, do you want to see more support in certain places? Do you want to see more programs, like in a perfect world, to help people who are suffering with addiction? What do you think should happen?
Let me make a general statement. I know that there's a trend to say, well, this person was really good in business, so they're going to be really good in politics. They're going to take the same skill set that they had in business and they're going to apply it to government. That applies with some things. I think it applies maybe to economics. Especially in the supply chain related things, there's a lot of things governmentally that will affect supply chain when it comes to manufacturing. And I think having a person that understands that is really great. Where it breaks down is there's a lot of services. You were mentioning veterans. There's a lot of services governmentally on all federal, state, and local that don't have the same model and they won't hold up. For example, getting back to some of the detox people that I've talked to, they have a rough job because happy stories are not plentiful. And if you would apply that to, let's say, through a course of a given week or 2 weeks, a certain provider might treat 10 people, and 2 of them, maybe one of them, have an optimistic future that's possible after making it through there. The other ones are highly questionable. Someone with a business model would look at that and say, you're not getting results.
Mm.
Okay. But I can tell you that provider is probably not making a lot of money. That provider is there because that one person made it into a successful treatment. And here again, getting back to these events that we hold, that one person will come up to that provider and introduce them to their family, and they're enjoying that day with their family because of that treatment. I've had providers tell me about people that have come back that have gone to college, that have started a business, and those people would not exist had it not been for the treatment that they got. But looking at it as a business model, they're only one of 10 or maybe one of 50 or one of 100.
Yeah.
But that's why those people are there, because they believe in the mission so much that one person gives them the satisfaction, gives them the purpose in their lives to go help the next one. And looking at it with the business model, they would say that's not, it's not a productive model. We're getting rid of it. So then all these success stories don't happen. And you got to keep in mind that this is an approach that, for the most part, only government and the generosity of people can provide, because there is no profit incentive for the private sector to do that kind of work.
Yeah.
And I just think that in some cases, when we think about those kind of programs being offered by the government, we really have to keep in mind that you have to view that through a different lens. You're helping a population that's very difficult to help. You're helping a population that's very difficult to reach, but those people's lives have value.
Mm-hmm.
And they can turn their lives around, but they have to be given a chance. And yes, it can seem futile, but for those who believe in the work, it is rewarding enough for those few success stories. And that would be my thing. I know there's a lot of talk these days. And here again, I'm not saying that getting rid of government waste is a bad thing. I'm not saying that at all. But to take a hatchet to those programs and knowing that there's people who work for not a lot of money, for those in those government programs, they work for not a lot of money. They could make more money in the private sector, helping people do other things. And they're in that because of that one success story. They're there and they tear up. They feel emotional when they talk about the person that went to college, or the person that got their life turned around and got their kids back and got their wife back or their spouse back or whoever, or conquered a mental situation. Cured is a thing that is hard to say, but they get their lives to the point where they control their disability. Their disability doesn't control them. And they got that way because somebody went out to help them when profit was not the motivator.
And then look at like what the return on investment is, even if it's just that one person that provider helps. Like you said, a lot of them, end up being counselors and help other people. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, like I said, especially the ones that help the homeless, that's a population that don't understand a lot of times that you're trying to help them. They don't understand why you're not giving me my money. I want my money. And they don't understand, well, you need that for rent. You need that for, they get screamed at. They get abused a lot of times by the people they're trying to help. And then you have politicians saying that it's a waste of time to have these kind of programs, and they're there for not a whole lot of money. And in the face of that, they're there because they believe in helping people. There's no other reason to be there.
So are you aware of any programs that have been cut or funding that have been cut so far?
No, I have not. I am not. I can't name a specific one so far, but I can tell you that the attitude that a lot of people have, that these things aren't worth having because they don't fit a business model. The business model approach isn't always the best thing for government. And over the years, that has absolutely cost. But if you're referring to the latest things that's going on here within the last several weeks, if it has happened, it hasn't impacted Ohio yet. There's a lot of local people who are scrambling to find out where those things could land.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is
and I'm hearing this like in different things. Like I have a friend who works in cancer research, and they didn't mean to cut cancer research. They meant to cut something else, but then it affected that as well. So yeah, they are really taking a hatchet to everything. And I get it, but at the same time, we need to slow down. They're going a little too fast, and important things are being cut. So we really, unfortunately, they need to take time. And I understand our country is 36 trillion in debt, so we don't have much time. But for stuff like this, we need to take the time and be smart about it.
You got to keep in mind that the agencies like the ones I work for have numerous programs that come from different levels of all kinds of government and from all kinds of organizations. And any cuts that actually most of the time the fiscal year starts July 1st. So and here again we have accountants and professional funds people working all the time. And I think those things will start to come to light a little more in the coming months once they dig a little deeper into some of the things that have been renewed, some of the things that have been canceled. A lot of that data just isn't there yet.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware of something in Ohio that has just blown away services. I'm not aware of that at this time. But I
Mhm.
can tell you that I can't definitively say that there isn't impact happening yet. We just haven't been able to figure out where that money is being cut off. A lot of people that are in the services sector are really looking at laws changing around Medicare
Yeah.
to make sure that a lot of the services that I was speaking of are still going to be covered. And that's just a little murky right now. I don't know a definitive answer yet.
Yeah. Well, it's a good warning too for us all to look out for and rally against if they're looking to cut important programs. So,
Yes.
anything else you want to mention about this topic? You've given us so much information, and like I said, it's just funny because we've talked numerous
Mhm.
times before. I've been on your show numerous times, and I just remember one of the conversations that you talked about like a little bit of what you do, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a whole other Billy I've never met before.
Well, I try to keep what I do as a commentator, and which I've done for years, and certainly I haven't done stand up since I've been working in this industry. But I try to keep those identities separate because obviously I don't want to get into any trouble,
Yeah.
and because people don't have a sense of humor anymore. So, so I try to keep those identities separate. I don't know that I have anything grand to say. I'm a very average person, and I can tell you, if I had to wave a magic wand, I wish there was a way for people to be more considerate of each other. It sounds
Yeah.
like a cliche, but empathy these days
Mhm.
is very hard to find.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I have the privilege of working around good people during the day a lot, um, people who are very selfless. I have a different view, not that I was ever a heartless person. I never was that. I don't think I was ever that. But being around, changing my work environment over the last 10 years and getting involved with volunteerism and some other things like I have, I just have a different filter, a
Mhm.
different filter now. I'm not as impressed by success. Not to say there's anything wrong with being filthy rich. But I'm not as impressed by that as I was when I was your age.
Mm.
I can tell you that we are a society too. This is very important too. We don't really revere talent. We don't really respect talent. We respect success. And that has become more so with the advent of social media. And not to be crude here, but somebody bears their ass and backs it into a camera, and for whatever reason, things fall their way, and they become wealthy. We will worship that person.
Mhm.
Someone who can genuinely do something with talent, if they don't gain an audience, we won't respect them.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to start to respect people's work, both what they do to make a living, what they do as a creative, and respect hard work and dedication and sincerity. I think those are kind of like being genuine, um, being positive, and being engaging are qualities that will buy you a lot of success in life.
You know, in terms of like being online and having empathy, I it really bothers me how easy it is for people to bully online. And it
Yes.
happens all the time. I mean, this is my life now. My life is online. So I get bullying every day. Um, Most of the time it doesn't bother me. I'm so used to it at this point. But even when people have said the worst things about me, I still try to talk to them with respect.
Yes.
How I think about it is I talk to people online just like I would talk to my neighbor. I might not agree with my neighbor about everything, but I have to live with them. And you know what? When you're talking to someone online, they might be in your neighborhood. You don't even know.
Mhm.
So um, it's like when I'm sure we've all had it at a point where you've had some road rage with someone that's in front of you and then they stop at the same place you are
Mhm.
and you're like, "Oh man, I don't want to confront them." That's just kind of the attitude I have with everything. It's like, okay, what happens if this person's right in front of me? What happens if they're interviewing me for a job? Like whatever.
Yes.
And that's just the outlook I have. I don't understand why people degrade other people. I just don't get
Yeah.
where people like what they get out of it.
I don't understand it either. There is a fascination with being snarky.
Mhm.
And even some of these influencers, do things outrageous in the public to garner a bad reaction.
Yeah.
I can tell you here again, I'm of a certain age, and talking about opportunities. I really do believe that most of us, no matter what your walk of life is, what your background is, where you're from, most of us have a given amount of opportunities that come our way through a given period of time. And when you hear somebody talking about their life in a positive way, when they say, "I am so blessed that I've had the opportunities that I've had," or "I have been so lucky to have the opportunities that I have," "I am so grateful that the universe sent me these things," and "I'm so grateful that I had mentors." If you listen to that person and you look at them, they are all those things. They are the things that they have been grateful for. By the same token, when you hear somebody say, "Oh, I never get a break. Nobody ever gives me a chance. People don't understand don't value me for how wonderful I am. They don't appreciate me." When you examine that person, they are all those things. They are the
Mm.
person that you want to stay away from.
Yeah.
And the opportunities come to those people who are the most gracious.
Mm.
And it's not karma. I'm not a spiritual person, but karma does work in the context of, I don't think it's a force, but it is something that just in terms of common sense. If you own a business and you are constantly not paying your vendors, sooner or later, your vendors aren't going to deal with you anymore. That's not karma. That's what you brought on yourself.
Yeah.
And in karma, in that context, is when you are that gracious person, when you are the person who's always wanting to help others. There's a great book called The Go Givers.
Mm.
That's a book you have to check out. It's called The Go Givers. And it talks about happiness and success in life comes with helping other people achieve happiness and success.
Yeah.
And that is something that has been totally forgotten. And those
Mhm.
people who are always saying, "I never get a break," wouldn't know a break if it walked in, because when they walk in the room, they're not going to say a word to that person or address that situation or offer to help in any way. And you really do put yourself in a position to make yourself feel good about helping other people. And that does come around in a way when you are recognized as an inspiration, when you are recognized as a person who people want to be around. You don't really have to sell yourself that much anymore.
And that's
Not
kind
enough.
of the key to happiness right there.
Yeah.
I always say, like, if you're always thinking internally, like, how can I make myself happy? You're probably not going to be happy. But if you wake up every day and you're like, how can I serve others? Happiness will follow. It's like when how I was described it, it's like when you're chasing a butterfly, they fly away from you. But if,
Hmm.
if you don't move, it will come to you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's just happiness right there. So, yeah, that's really incredible. Smart words.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like even recently, yesterday actually, someone had filmed a video showing there was like an oil spill in the Grand River, which goes right into Lake Michigan. And this guy was like, I called 911. They asked me if I needed an ambulance. I said no, but I can smell there's toxic fumes, like something is here. And someone tagged me in that video. And even though it's on the other side of the state, it's still I still consider it my community. It's my state. It's our Great Lakes.
Yeah.
It's really important. And so I spent yesterday calling a bunch of people, figuring out who to report it to. I made a video about it and everything, and made enough noise that it's like Eagle is what it's called in Michigan, but it's like our EPA. And they went out same day. They identified what it came from. They were cleaning it up. And I'm like, yes, like that is my happiness right there. And that's exactly why I started my platform, because I actually wanted to help make change. And I don't think I did it myself. I said it was a team effort. If that guy didn't make the video, if someone didn't tag me in the video, like if all the pieces didn't happen, if people didn't share my post when I did talk about it and stuff, they might not have, like, they probably would have blew it off, honestly. So all the things happened for a reason. It was a team effort, and like I said, that brings me joy. So
Sure. Yeah, well, I'll give you a lot of credit. It's a lot of politics is Monday morning quarterbacking, and you put on a helmet and you went out in the field and you got hit in the teeth, and not too many people are willing to do that. They're willing to say what somebody else should have done, but they don't do it themselves.
Yeah.
So I give you a lot of respect there.
I appreciate it. That's just something I think about, is like back in the day, we had Martin Luther King, we had Rosa Parks, like we had all these amazing activists that literally put their life on the line. And today, like, who's the closest person to that? I wish we had that type of activism that there was back in the day. I wish we had that today. Like, we would be unstoppable today. So if I can just do my small part, I'm definitely not comparing myself to the legends. Don't misconstrue that. But I'm just saying, like, it just takes a little bit of effort from a lot of people, especially online. It's so easy to get something going viral. So if we want to make change, we can do it ourselves. We don't need big money politics. We don't need a lot of money. We literally all post the same thing with the same trending keyword or whatever, and we can get it trending and get people's attention. Like, it's as simple as that today.
Yes. Yeah, I would strongly advise getting involved in your community. I think I kind of have with the nonprofits that I'm involved with. But speaking to everyday actions, you don't necessarily have to be an activist. Getting back to what I said, try this for a week if you're feeling brave. Give people the benefit of the doubt. When you come up to the counter at a store and you converge with somebody, rather than saying, well, that's my spot, step back and say, hey, go ahead and go. Hey, do you need help with that? Something I can carry for you. Just give it a week. And I can't guarantee, there's no guarantees in life, but I can almost tell you the likelihood that you're going to see a difference in your life is very, very high.
Yeah.
It's very high. You would be surprised.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Billy, how can people find you? You have your own show. Do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Sure, I'll tell you. Obviously, my name is Billy Dees, and all my platforms in the podcast too is just my name. So the Billy Dees podcast, we're going on 10 years now.
That's awesome.
And we've been on all the major platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on down the line. I'm a big believer, if you're not on one of those platforms, you don't have a podcast. Because this has become a big discussion with me. I've had people, what is a podcast? Well, if you go to a podcast platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify and you search your name and you don't come up, you might have a really good video channel. You might have a really good social media channel. You might have a really good TikTok or whatever, but you don't have a podcast. We've been on all the podcast platforms for about 10 years. And I'm very happy with that. And oddly enough, not to talk shop, but what's been interesting for me is the listens have actually gone up and my engagement on social media has gone down. And I've looked into this, and this is part of a trend. I think you have social media now that is much more fragmented. 5 years ago, you had the big three. You had Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Those now are not the only games in town. You have many, many platforms now, and you have a lot of social media usage as a whole isn't what it used to be. And two, the models have changed. It used to be that you had followers. where now people don't necessarily follow their followers. They follow some sort of a your page
Yep.
algorithm, your page. So maybe only 1 or 2% of your followers are actually seeing your content. And really the only way to ensure getting seen on social media is to pay for it. So you're right back to advertising models. So with that being said, not that's necessarily a bad thing. There's some aspects of X I like as a media platform, not necessarily as a social media platform. And I've done boosts on X, and they've been successful. But I think now at the same time, you have cable news, which is eroded horribly. So there's the new media now, and podcasting is a part of that. And you have podcasts like mine, not that mine's so great, but it has long history. So
I think yours is great. I
well,
like going on your show. You're just, I love talking with you. I can just tell, even though we've never met in person, I can just tell you're a good person. And it's just so easy to talk to you. So your show's great.
Well, thank you. The long history helps though, because now you have people going to what I call the new media. So, in social media is kind of fragmented. Traditional media is on the ropes. So people are going to podcasts. Podcasts played a pivotal role in the election, this last election cycle. I mean, you might say for better or for worse, but they definitely played a role. And you can't ignore what's happening right now with Substack. Substack is becoming the default place for real journalists. And there's some really great stuff happening on Substack.
So I might be a fake journalist then, because I have a Substack, but I don't pay attention too much. I post my podcast on there.
Well, see, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And I've been hesitating because it's just one more thing I have to maintain.
Yeah.
But I think I'm ready to take the leap now. It's time to get into Substack. I think it's a great platform if you have time and you can write well. There's a lot of people who are searching for that kind of content because there isn't a lot of well-written content out there anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just off the top of my head, people like Matt Taibbi and all those, they're just really doing great. So, there's a new media now that people are looking to for information and analysis. And, so yeah, I think podcasts are positioned to do very well.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out. Lately, I missed 1 week because my power was out when I was supposed to film a podcast. So going into this, my intention was to do every week, Wednesday it releases. But with the type of content that this is, I feel like it's pretty heavy content. It's typically like I just trusted you to just go for it. I didn't really research too much about the topic. But that's not the same. Like I did a few episodes ago. I researched for like 2 or 3 months.
Oh my Lord.
So some topics are very heavy and it takes a lot because I have to simplify it. And that's kind of my role. I let other people tell their story and then I make it, I help tell it in plain English.
Yeah.
So I know that it's important to be consistent. That's what everyone said going into starting a podcast. Oh, and shout out to Billy because you really helped me starting my show. I asked you so many questions and you were so gracious and kind to me. I was like, I don't know if this is a silly question. And you're like, let me help you.
Oh, of course. Well, here again, you inspire that because you in that X space, you came and when I was getting beat up on,
yeah,
you came in and requalified what I was saying, and so yes, absolutely. And I love, like I said, being on your podcast I don't do many for whatever reason. I just don't guest on many. You are about as respectable and well researched and as solid of a journalist that I can possibly imagine. I mean, you are just fantastic, Anna. I mean, I'm not trying to blow smoke your way. You really are good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I might switch to every other week, especially just since I'm like a one-woman show. It takes me, depending on how long the episodes are, some of them have been like 3 hours. So it takes me like 2 full days to edit it and put the captions and upload all that. And I can't do that every week and keep up with all social media. So I'm thinking either going to every other week Or I was thinking I could do seasons, and I have like at least 5 more episodes planned for this next month that I'm recording. So I could just kind of end it in May for the season 1 and then have like the whole summer off, but I could record
Sure.
episodes to have them to do season 2. So everyone listening, if you have ideas for me, what you would like to see, just keep it for the full year, but just spread them out a little bit so I'm not overwhelming myself. Because yeah, it's all about like if people only knew what, like they're kind of heavy topics. It's not just like, Trump did this stupid thing yesterday, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's very well researched stuff and trying to find good stories and everything.
I know your foundation is research, without a doubt, and that's one of your shining attributes. I can tell you, on the other hand, just to keep this in the back of your mind, I was talking to a company that's consulting with ours the other day, and I heard a great quote when it comes to content. Any content worth doing is worth doing bad. And what that basically means is so many people sit on stuff. They sit on great ideas. They sit on stuff. And getting back to consistency and being genuine. I'm not telling you what to do because you're the master of your own show. But I can tell you, for me, one of the things I have learned is people just like to hear where you're coming from. They like to hear your thoughts, how you analyze things. Not every show is going to unlock secrets of the universe. It's just not going to happen. But one of the things that I try to do with my show, for example, is when a certain thing happens, everybody is so polarized now, and they all have these ideologies. For example, something happens with gun control. I know exactly what Sean Hannity is going to say. I know exactly what Rachel Maddow is going to say. And everybody on the right and left knows what the other one is going to say. So what I try to do is I try to take it in a direction that nobody has considered before. That's kind of like my shtick. Sometimes I do it well. Sometimes I really hit it out of the park. Sometimes, I really didn't go the way I wanted it to. But you know what? That consistency, that thing with regular listeners, they get accustomed to where you're going to go with things. And for me anyway, that has worked. And that quote I heard was, because you don't expect him to say any, when you always expect any job worth doing is worth doing right. But with content, if it's worth doing, if this spot here at 8:00 on Friday is your spot, and you don't have anything, you put something there.
Gotcha.
Put something there.
Yeah.
And I think there's a discipline. One of the reasons why I like the live shows, not all my shows are live. The interviews are usually pre-recorded because I like those to be controlled. But some of the live shows, there's a certain discipline to having to be on. One of my writer friends, her name's Dorothy Rosby. She told me that writer's block is, that is a luxury that only amateur writers can have. When you're a professional writer, you have a deadline.
Yeah.
That column has to be ready. And I think there's a discipline to doing that. It's not always going to be great, but over time you develop a mindset. And that's been one of the things that I have really concentrated on my whole career. There's days when I was doing stand-up, I did not feel like being there. I felt like sitting home on the couch. I didn't feel like being funny. And oddly enough, some of those nights were my best nights. When I would go up there all charged up, I would fall flat. So I think forcing yourself to do it, for me anyway, not telling you what to do or anybody else what to do, but forcing myself to do it has helped.
You can tell me what to do. Yep. That is something. No, that's great advice because sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to do it. Like, something that I have to like grind my teeth to do since I always put out regular content, even when I do not post content on the weekend because I want to take the weekends off, my views go down for a while. So social media just hates me taking the weekends off. So, if I was disciplined, I would record content before, schedule it out so it posts. See, I need to have that discipline to do that. And so, well, I appreciate your advice. I appreciate you sharing what you do and some great advice for everyone. Like I said, it especially hit home when you said if someone does commit suicide, to please check up on everyone around them. Like
Yes,
that's
it's
really what
vital.
I took away from this. That really hit home. So I'll keep that in mind. And yeah, and like I said, in terms of government, we need to just watch out to make sure that these important programs aren't being cut and it's not looked at as like a business model, because every person saved is important. So,
Yes.
um, but yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, Billy.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show. Yeah, because you are a rising star for sure. You're already rising, so you're already risen in a lot of cases. So yes, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'll definitely come on your show again if I'm invited.
Oh, absolutely. You're welcome anytime.
Okay, awesome. Everyone, have a good week and let me know how often I should be posting the podcast. Let me know your thoughts. Have a good week, everyone.